Welcome to Pain in the Arts, the podcast with the most cast. Is it? Welcome to Pain in the Arts, the podcast where the pursuit of meaningful art meets the unpredictable demands of real life. I'm Lyndon.
And I am Breallyn. Welcome to the show.
You haven't listened to any of the episodes yet, have you?
I have not.
So you've got no feedback.
No, no idea.
For me on my editing.
No.
Which is the editing pretty much consists of me taking out all the gaps between every word in every sentence that I speak.
I might have to get over the sound of my own voice. That's always horrendous when you first start listening to yourself after you haven't for a while. But
yeah, and I realised how Australian I sound on certain words.
Yeah.
Yeah. G'day, mate.
There is no getting around it. We are Aussies doing an Aussie podcast.
I've opened up the studio doors today just so that we've got some natural ambience. Actually, it's not for the ambience at all. It's for the airflow. It's a beautiful day outside.
It's gorgeous.
It was 31 yesterday. That really caught me by surprise. And the fact that we're having a second day that it's not as hot, but it's still a nice day, nice and sunny.
Beautiful in the garden. Everything's growing. The weather's lovely and
not everything's growing. Actually, I saw the strawberries have died.
Our strawberries have died, but that may be a sign of things to come because we know there's a baking hot summer just around the corner. By the end of it, we'll have no lawn. There'll just be dry brown dirt, and that's what happens. Yeah. Even down here in Melbourne.
Yep. Well, and fire season will be upon us.
It will, which is quite scary.
Not so scary for us.
Not for us, but for our state, for our country. We've obviously had bushfires in recent years that have been extremely devastating. So, summer's great, but it certainly is risky in Australia.
Now, have you brought a topic?
I have brought a topic.
Week?
Yep.
I don't think I've actually brought one that was on our list.
Yeah, no, the list is left.
I think you have.
I have, I did one, but I've certainly left the list behind. But that's okay. We had a list. We began with the list, and we may not always need the list. We can always,
Well, we sat down outside a few months ago, and we said that these are the sorts of things that we'll probably be talking about, and we thought there would be like 5 or 6 things, and then we'd have to rack our brains for the extra however many we might need, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, who knows. And I think within about 10 minutes we had nearly 2 years worth of podcasts or ideas or titles, and we're like, oh, okay, there is a bit to talk about, at least that
we're interested to talk about. So strap in. You guys are in for the long haul.
It was stuff that we just talk about anyway.
Yeah.
That was what it was.
Well, that's it. It's not like these are conversations that are foreign to us. This is our daily discussion that we kind of have after dinner or whatever. So it's really nice to collect some thoughts and put them into a topic and thresh them out in a little bit of a better format. And I bet these sorts of conversations are going on in so many homes around the country, the world. So it's, just nice to talk about them on the record. The first thing I wanted to talk about is this, being a creative versus being creative. To me, this seems like a new term. Relatively, I suppose, the term a creative. It's gained a lot of popularity. We used to stick with terms like an artist or even describe people like they're a creative person or a creative spirit. So it was like an adjective. But now it's like it's been nounified. And I guess to me what that reflects is that in the scheme of things there's a lot of newer jobs and careers like digital creators and so on that are using creativity in the workplace. So I think it's like a complimentary term to call somebody a creative. It's like a designation given to that creative work that many people use in their creative lives. And often for those that don't work in those fields, it used to be like, oh, they're a creative type, which was sort of slightly disparaging.
If I had been called that or sort of spoken about in that way, like from my aunties or something when I was younger, yeah, I wouldn't have thought too fondly of it.
Yeah. What, like he's the creative type?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think because like when you're that way inclined, when you feel like it's your whole being, like that's what you were born to do, even if you don't quite know how it's going to all look, you feel like there's this thing greater than yourself. So when someone just sort of labels it something that feels a bit diminutive, yeah, you just kind of go, oh, that actually that doesn't feel right.
Doesn't it feel great? I know it was always accompanied by a bit of an eye roll, especially if we were working in different things like event planning and doing different things. Oh, these creative types.
Oh, true.
They've got to get on with, they bringing these ideas and how are we ever going to get them done or whatever. So it was always a little bit disparaging. Right. So, I mean, I think it's kind of nice that now people are like, oh, he's a creative or she's a creative on our creative team.
Well, so you think that's changed because of the nature of the workforce?
I think it possibly has. Like it's a term that is definitely newer, and I think that maybe, bringing creativity to jobs is definitely more valued now, which is a nice thing.
So hang on, so where did this come from? Because this wasn't on our list, was it?
Oh, this is definitely not on our list.
So you strayed off the list.
Oh, yeah, the list is long gone in my mind.
Burn the list.
Yeah, the list is gone. But what I did, even though it's nice to think, like a couple of times people have said to me, oh, you're a creative, and it sort of felt like a compliment. But what I wanted to dig into a little bit is that good for us as creative people, for us to be designated as a creative or just to think of ourselves as creative? And the reason it's got me thinking, I've been rereading, it's an excellent book by Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way. Probably a lot of people have got this, and I have an old copy that I've taken with me on every move we've made for the last 20 years. I've always had it with me.
I've never seen that book.
Really?
No, I do recognise it. I've never read it.
Well, we do have an extensive bookcase, several bookcases. In fact, at one stage...
Has she put out any albums that I would have listened to?
I don't know, but it's probably... Well, it is on audiobook because I've actually listened to part of it on audiobook.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's always been lurking on the bookcase somewhere.
It doesn't say the creative way.
It says the
or
artist's
the creative's way. The artist's way.
Yeah, the way of the artist is how it's written, the artist apostrophe S's way. Yeah, and this is a great book. I've looked at it over the years. Every once in a while I've sort of flicked through it, gotten some new inspiration or ideas. And I even, this time when I was looking through, found a sweet little card from my friend Hannah, who had gifted me the book. Hannah's an amazing visual artist that we know, was actually your friend first, Lyndon. But
well, it's not a competition. She's
in
Broken Hill now.
I know.
Do you remember going to Broken Hill?
Yeah.
Going, where is the hill?
It's quite hilly.
Is it hilly?
Well, the hill's broken, so it ain't there anymore. I don't know.
When my parents lived at Pyramid Hill, and it's just flat plains, but there is a hill in the town called Pyramid Hill.
Spoiler, not a pyramid.
Not a pyramid, but it is the only hill in town.
Yeah. I remember when Hannah and she'd come across this book, and I think she pretty much bought a copy for every creative person that she knew. And I remember talking to her about it, and just I can still see like the light in her face as she was talking about how freeing some of these ideas are. So it's definitely been a mainstay in my bookcase over the years. But a couple of the things I wanted to bring from Julia Cameron's work is she says, creativity occurs in the moment, and in the moment we are timeless. And another thing she says is the attention to final form ignores the fact that creativity lies not in the done, but in doing. So thinking about the process, not the product, and the process of creating rather than the being of being a creative or being a something. That's what I wanted to have a little look at, those intersections today.
This already feels like it's beyond my intellect.
No, not at all. Because, and I'll tell you why. Because, I mean, your one of your job titles is literally producer. So it's like the final product is implied. It's like one of your job titles is producer. It's not the explorer or the experimenter. It's the producer. You've got to produce a product. So it's, and I know that over the years you've said, I want that producing job. It needs to be more creative. It needs to be more explorative. It needs to have the experimentation and take the risk and look at all the little byways and different ideas that might come, rather than just kind of having that final product in mind and smashing it out in a time limit.
Well, and thinking about it as a product
Yeah.
is already like sort of thinking about it in reverse, like that nearly kills it from any of those other things existing in a way.
Yep, absolutely. Another quote from the book is that fixated on the need to have something to show for our labours, we often deny our curiosities. Every time we do this, we are blocked. Which is, it's funny because often we think about being blocked as it comes from within, like it's our own artist block. I've got a writer's block at the moment or something. But having that outside pressure of produce something, complete something, there's a block right there. So,
well, yeah, that sort of came up, I think, maybe on last week's episode, because I always feel like I don't ever have writer's block. I know it's a thing. I think I don't have writer's block. And then I realised, listening back to our episodes, I realised how many things I actually do have that block me from working and doing the work that I want to do. So they are actual blocks. But in terms of coming up with an idea, that's what I've always thought writer's block is, like not being able to come up with an idea. And I think where perhaps musicians are fortunate is that we might sit down to write a lyric and only get so far and go, oh, I'll just pick up this instrument. So you get inspiration from just switching gears, going to something else. Whereas I have wondered if your job is literally writing, that was it, then you'd have to sort of have the discipline, I guess, to fight through that and show up the next day.
Yep, definitely. Well, that's probably when you see me walking around the house muttering to myself and rage cleaning.
Rage cleaning.
Yeah, for sure. So just the process of creating and developing that process. And I know that a lot of writers, visual artists and artists of all types get quite protective about their process once they've developed it to be working for them. And there's a little bit of a fear embedded of what if it fails me, or what if I go through all these things that have helped me in the past to get my creativity flowing and it's happening well, but it fails me this time. So yeah, just developing that creative process I think it's important, and to be focused on the act of creating and on the timelessness in that moment is really important. I wanted to slightly digress because I think like in the Insta era, these little micro processes are kind of packaged up as a product and they're filling our feeds and filling up our minds. And the intention obviously is to grab our attention, get more views and followers and so on. But what that does, like for people who are genuinely trying to create something and get some attention for it, it stops and stifles that creative process. It, like, instead of keeping on following it and allowing that idea to continue and something bigger or more or different to come out of it, it's like everything's choked off at the initial idea. Like that's the be all and end all of it.
What are you saying, that when things come up, and you're sort of talking about Instagram, aren't you?
I guess so.
So are you saying when things come up, they're a version of the idea, or they're simplifying the process? What do you mean?
There's just so much richness that we're missing when we only allow a short attention span to something. So I think as consumers of art and culture, which we all are, We've got to give artists like that time and attention to really tell the full story and show like the full thing that they want to bring, and allow them that space and time to create
Right.
it.
So that's not the platform for it.
It's
As
not the
we kind of
platform
were
for it.
talking about that as well. Weren't
Yeah, we were. I guess what I'm saying is for viewers, consumers, people who are seeing these shorter forms of a creative expression, to push against that limited attention span and that limited idea of here's a little quick package of art and this is what art is. But what I'm particularly wanting to focus on too for this discussion is when we're talking about developing a creative process and essentially what to do when it all flies out the window, which is what I'm wanting to sort of get towards. My idea is that for people who are creative, to keep in mind, your creativity and your expression, it's not a product, and it's certainly not a product that needs to be shown in 10 seconds, smushed in the middle of 100 other ones. It's a way of being and it's a way of living your life. So it's not a product, and it's certainly not an Insta product. So it's just a little reminder.
Interesting. I did see a post from, I wonder if I can find out who it was. 'Cause I just started following her. But she was basically urging creative people to not niche down.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that she was that passionate about it, but it makes a lot of sense because that whole notion of finding that one thing that you do and then just exploiting that is a very sort of commercial notion, I guess.
Yep.
And so she was saying, do everything. I'm not going to be able to find it at the moment. I'll put a link to her in the show notes. If you're a singer but you're into pottery, do the pottery as well. Do the writing, whatever floats your boat creatively, do it all. What's wrong with that?
Absolutely. I agree. It's actually one of the points that I wanted to make was valuing things, creative things or creative expressions of yourself that might not be in your specific wheelhouse of what your main passion is or your main job or whatever it is. And it could be anything. It could be just cooking. It could be one part of your job might be some kind of creative problem solving that you can bring to the table. It could be crafting. It could just be anything. It could be wrapping Christmas presents, like with those neat little folds and the ribbons. I love when people do that.
You can't make money off of folding ribbons.
I'm not saying make money, but just be creative in your life.
Good on them. Christmas time.
Yeah.
Maybe raking it in.
Yeah.
Actually, have you seen that with the paper folding when they wrap a present in a way that you can then just tuck the card into it?
Yeah, that's really sweet. I love it when people do that. And
I put them above the ribbon makers. People that fold ribbons, people that fold the origami kind of wrapping of presents.
Yeah.
That is elite.
That is elite.
That could be a sport. I'd watch that over seeing another 8-year-old solve a Rubik's Cube in under 2 minutes. 2 minutes, 8 seconds or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Show me these gift wrappers.
Gift wrappers. There's a
That's
craft.
impressive.
It is impressive. Today I wanted to talk about what happens when creative people have some like big roadblocks along the way, like seismic events that change things. And it might not be like a car accident or something that changes your life in an instant. It might just be something like it's become impossible to make a living from your creative practices, whether that's because it just isn't valued as an art form or because you feel like monetizing your art changes it in some way or devalues it or just kills off the joy of doing it. Sometimes it's the nature of the industry. And I know a number of actors that have just been like extremely good at what they do, friends of mine, but haven't found roles that pay well enough for them to be able to do that full time at that time. Like sometimes it literally is a matter of right place, right time for some of those things. A lot of our creative friends have found that conundrum along the way, and it can be a huge blocker to their enjoyment of their creativity and their feeling of value and worth within themselves and their practices. So I think that can be a big roadblock of going, got to make a living somehow, but does that mean giving up on my art, or do I struggle along and have part-time crappy jobs along the way? Yeah, it just seemed to really be something that we've seen a lot of friends struggle with over the years.
And there's not one way either. I know for me, back when I was more focused on being a solo performer, like an original artist, like I wasn't able to do cover gigs because I'd found the time and effort I needed to put into that was taking away from a similar pursuit in a way. It just seemed to be two completely different industries, really. So that wasn't for me. But yeah, other people were completely fine doing that. And the more they were playing, the happier and more fulfilled that they were. If I just had a job that I didn't have to think about, like what you're saying, like a crappy part-time job, then the creative side of me can just focus on doing the original music. And that's the decision I made. And even that I couldn't reconcile that either completely. That's sort of what you're talking about. I was listening to Nick Offerman today, actually, on another podcast. I think he said it was 9 years or something before he got his role on Parks and Recreation as Ron Swanson. But in that time, he wasn't just sitting on his hands. He actually set up his own woodworking shop, which is not just a creative thing. It's like highly skilled and highly specialised in its own right.
Totally.
Making boats and bespoke furniture and whatever else he was doing.
Came in handy for his role in Parts and Rec.
Yeah. So I think that that's the perfect kind of world, and it's not easy.
It's not easy,
no
and
answers.
it doesn't.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. I suppose my point too is that if you're doing a job that is completely not creative and you're still going for your auditions and stuff for your acting roles, but then you're also sewing or cooking or doing something that is like some kind of creative outlet, don't devalue that. Like, just enjoy that process of creativity, because it is timeless. It is like when you're in that moment, no matter what it is that you're doing, it's an expression somehow. That's really worth it. That's really worthwhile. And we don't value that stuff that much, I think.
Yeah. And today I was thinking about, making coffee and how even that can be a creative expression. But the reason I was thinking about it was because I did an early morning coffee job. And just so that there's some context to this, we've had the coffee van for 12, 13 years, and we're trying to sell it at the moment. So it for me was the part-time job that I was in control of, but it was also doing something I was passionate about. So I was passionate about coffee. When I was on tour, Macca, the bass player, shout out to Macca,
Hey, Macca.
Great guy. He called me it wasn't coffee arsehole. It was, did he call me the coffee Nazi? Yeah, that probably sounds like him.
I thought the coffee arsehole sounded more like him. But
Because anyway, so I was very passionate about getting a good coffee wherever I was.
And when we say passionate, you mean you were absolutely obsessed, and
I was obsessed.
definitely takes up more than half the day's thought process.
Yeah, that was sad. But I did manage to, I tell people that I put our kids through college doing coffee. It's not really true. They just went to high school.
State high school too.
Barely finished. But yeah, so we're selling the coffee van. But
it was
I am
our
doing
kid's
the
first
odd
job.
Yeah, I did this one this morning, and I actually was enjoying meeting people, talking to people. But when I was doing it every day, and I was really trying to balance that with having a music career, I really did not like being recognised as the coffee guy.
Yeah.
I liked it with the clients, but I didn't like it from other people that knew me. That's all they'd say is, "Oh, so how's the coffee van going?" Or, "Are you still doing coffee? You still got the..." I wanted them to ask me about music I was working on and studio things and stuff that I was really into and had been passionate about for years, and instead they went straight to the coffee.
Yep.
Yeah, so
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Well, once you become a mum, that's all you get asked. Well, how's the kids? Yeah, that's
Right.
your only thing. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, for sure. It's almost like that was the thing that you'd been working towards was being the coffee guy, and now you're finally the coffee guy, and now they can ask about
It's also
being the
easier
coffee
to
guy.
understand. And in Melbourne, everyone's sort of into coffee.
Yeah, everyone remembers you're the coffee guy.
Yeah.
They're probably hoping for a coffee.
Hey, can I circle back? I don't want to make this all about me, but back to Ron Swanson.
Oh, love Ron Swanson.
I met him,
Yes, I was
and
going
that
to
was
say at the
doing
time.
coffee.
Yeah, come on, tell the story.
So one of my irregular customers worked across the road from one of my regular customers. And this guy builds furniture, but he specializes in these old style of chairs. Picture a wooden chair with an open back. That's not exactly right. It's
Like,
we would call it here a colonial chair, and that's really demeaning to this man's craft.
yeah,
But
because that just evokes orange wood copper art sort of.
oh, does it? Okay.
horrible.
Well, no, that's not what I was thinking of.
It is just that traditional style of chair with spindle back sort of.
Yeah. And he is known around the world for doing them. It's a chair that's built without any nails. I'm sure there's some glue involved, but I don't
But
know.
it's so
I'm
it's
not
the
a
proper
woodworker.
joinery, all of that, so that once the wood's
yeah.
joined, it holds
You know
because
how there's people
of the
that
tension.
like are into trains and they're really into trains. Well,
Yeah.
the people that are into like this form of woodwork are really passionate about it, really into it. And so anyway,
Yeah.
Nick Offerman is one of these guys
Yes.
who is into like the lost art of this particular kind of woodwork. I'm really out of my depth here.
And we were talking about how that was a part of his character in Parks and Rec was,
It's probably written for him.
yeah, that he did that. And I think some of the scenes were even shot in his actual
Yeah, that's
workshop
true.
at home. Yeah.
So the guy that had this workshop in Melbourne, he came over one day to grab a coffee with his mate from America. And I was a big fan of the show. I didn't even recognise him. He had a cap on. He had his beard. He had a lumberjack checkered shirt on.
So he had a beard hiding that distinctive chin. You wouldn't think Nick Offerman would be in Thomastown getting a coffee
I know.
while he's doing a woodworking workshop. We have mentioned before our daughter in the podcast and just alluded to her high care needs being our primary concern, and it's sort of been the reason that's derailed our creative processes from time to time. And we will talk about that in a coming episode, so stay tuned because there's going to be some interesting threads about that. But today I just want to talk about a couple of things that I found helpful when I realised how much care and support she would need and how that was going to be a huge disruptor, I suppose, to how we thought that life was going to progress, and how I thought, like, this is definitely our last baby. Once all the kids are off to school, my life will change. Things will be easier. I'll be able to refocus on the things that I want to do, have more time, all that sort of thing. And once I realised that's actually not going to happen, this is a much different process, and life will not be linear the way that I thought it was going to be. I had to reframe how I was thinking and what I was going to do about it, essentially. And I knew that it would be a long time before I would begin to be able to pursue creative things for myself because I want to and because I have kind of these things in mind that I want to do or explore. So I knew that was going to have to be deferred for quite a while. But what I did do was enroll in university, which might seem like a weird thing to do, but there was a few reasons for it. And one of the reasons, which is relevant for this discussion, was because I knew it would force me to make creative dates with myself, essentially. So actually put time for creativity into the pretty demanding schedule that was existing with 4 kids, special needs kid, business to run, all the rest of it. I sound like I've got so much time on my hands, but I did do it part-time over a very long time. And the course that I did was a master's degree in creative writing, publishing and editing at Melbourne University. And I knew when I enrolled that I'd have to do all sorts of writing in all sorts of genres for the course, all sorts of things that would really stretch me and make me do something that I wouldn't necessarily sit down and do otherwise. And I also knew that I'd get that chance to study other writers and other thinkers with this amazing prescribed reading list of required reading and recommended reading and so on things that it's all like collated for you. So it wasn't like I had to go and find these incredible writings myself. I could just literally read my way through the list, and I just was exposed to such amazing new things about the craft and the art of writing, and about the theories behind different parts of it. You know, it might be writing dialogue, it might be short fiction, whatever. It was just so great to deep dive in some of those things. And it was just like, by doing that course, I knew it would be my way of making space in my life for my artistic exploration and development, and that I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. It wasn't like I had more hours in the week. You can't change that. The time remains the same, and it's just how you spend it, I guess. But I wouldn't have had that consistent effort in setting aside those hours for my writing and writing development. I just wouldn't have done it. And I know that I wouldn't have had the discipline. I wouldn't have had the headspace to figure out what I was going to write about that day or whatever, if it hadn't been like, hey, do this assignment on biographies. And I don't know what that is. Is it the discipline from having outside people that I had to answer to and work that I had to hand in? Is it a part of people pleasing, or is it a part of fear of failing the class and getting into trouble in some way because you're sort of answerable to someone else? I don't know. I don't know why it's so much easier to do it if you've got someone else checking in on your work. But for me, I just knew that it was, and I knew that I would get so much more.
It's like having a personal trainer, isn't it?
I guess it is, yeah.
Like if you have a personal trainer, you have to show up for one, and then you have to have made some sort of improvement.
They're going to be checking. Yeah.
Otherwise, their disapproval, you want them to say, well done, great job.
Yeah.
And because you could just go and jog on your own. You could.
You could. You could. I could have just set aside Thursday afternoons or whatever every week to write about different things or explore different genres.
You must also have known that it's like the chance to get out of the house. It's the chance to be around other creative people. It's a chance to be in a space that is different, and that you're being around lecture rooms and old buildings and courtyards and different experiences. Like there's all of those things that come with it.
That's right, yeah.
It's not just
not just about the reading list and the writing list. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's the discussions and hearing what other people think. And absolutely it was like my little, not a secret life as such, but the days that I'd go to uni, I'd get to have a completely different headspace, switch gears completely, and it absolutely felt like a break. Like it was so weird, and I know
your masters felt like a break.
100%. It was the easiest part of my life.
It's a terrible thing to say for all the people that are struggling through uni.
Well, I'd literally be in class with like
when you go as a mature
age
student.
Yeah. And I was so aware of my status as mature age student. And doing a master's, it's a bit different to doing your undergrad. There's a lot more mature age students, and even the young ones are sort of considered 5 years or whatever older than people fresh out of high school starting to do their undergrad, whatever degrees and diplomas and so on. So, yeah, there was obviously a lot of older people, but I was completely aware that I would be going to class and other people would be feeling like it was a bit of a drag, and I'd just be like a puppy, woohoo, I'm here. And, yeah, just so excited and probably answering too many questions and chatting too much and all of that. But, yeah, I just absolutely loved it. I loved every second of it, and it was great. I absolutely felt like it was an indulgence and something that I sometimes felt a little bit guilty for. Like, was I robbing the family of my time and efforts when I could have been like working in a fish and chip shop or something?
I reconciled that within myself years ago.
But yeah, I think you've got to
bank accounts.
No, it did. It just felt sometimes when things were at home were tricky. There was so much unknown about our daughter's condition. Like, I could have been doing more research, do more about it, do more therapy for her, do more this, do more that. And I would
did so much stuff. And what also happened, I know this is a little bit of a sidebar to what you're talking about, but what also happened was we got ahead of where she was at. I mean, you probably never do too much research. And to an extent, there wasn't a lot of, there was barely any information out there because it's so rare. But remember, we were like, right, she's never going to speak, so we're going to learn sign language.
That's right.
And so...
And I'd looked up, will she go to like a deaf school? Because then everyone will...
Yeah, and I had an app that was teaching sign language. I wouldn't say we were well versed in sign language, but we certainly had a lot of signs, and we were teaching them to her when she was really young.
Yeah.
And then we realised that even that is beyond her ability to sign the actual sign. She has her own sign.
It got to a point where we realised she could do about 12 signs, and then the process would break down for her. And so it's much better to teach her something that is going to be of universal application, such as help, rather than the sign for lamb and pig and donkey and horse.
Yeah,
and all
I mean,
of
we
that
just
sort of thing.
sort of weren't even able to get onto those things, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you couldn't have researched any more than you did. Do you remember that time we were like, oh, maybe we'll buy a property that has enough land that we could set up like a petting zoo and all this sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Because we thought that little Birdie would be able to run it, maybe.
Yeah, that's right, that she'll have some sort of... Yeah, well, and I mean, it's still an idea, I suppose, like what will the future
It's
hold?
just like the capacity has been...
Yeah.
As time goes on, you go, oh, okay, that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. So, no, I did from time to time beat myself up going, this is an indulgence. I can see how all this knowledge will be applicable to future working me when the kids are at school and I've got some time to actually do some work. I'll be able to apply it, which I actually have. I've got a copywriting business now, but at the time it just sometimes felt like it was just for me and it was such a treat. And I highly recommend it. I think every creative person should do something. It might not be uni for you. It might be just collaborating on a project with someone, or like setting aside that time like you do with a personal trainer, or like a workout buddy, like do something with someone. That might be a way of doing it.
What if you hate being held accountable to anything?
Well, maybe find someone. And I heard a really interesting thing. It might have even been John Cleese or someone talking about, or were you telling me that you'd heard it? I can't remember. Was it my story or your story?
Hang on. Are you saying that I had some wisdom?
Yeah, but you'd heard it
my
from
own thought?
someone else. No, it wasn't from you. That you find someone to play with in a creative way, but they've got to be someone that is not at all negative. If they ever shoot down an idea, they're the wrong person. So if you come up with an idea, they've got to go, oh, yes.
It's called Yes and.
Yes and. Yeah, it's actually a comedy routine as well. So if you notice Roy and HG, one of them will come out with the most outrageous thing.
Yeah.
And the other one will go, yes, and.
Yeah, you just roll with it. Yeah. As soon as you question it, you kill
shoot it down. Yeah, that's right.
Kill it.
You can't.
And it's the same in the studio. I was talking to our son the other day about this, how when you're in the studio and you have to voice your opinion on whether something's working or not. There's a right way to go about it, or right ways, and then there's not so right ways, because you can really kill someone's spirit or their ability to keep trying with an idea.
Yeah.
Then, how do you go about saying that? But the yes and idea from comedy, actually, you can apply that. But
yeah, so you're not ever quashing down an idea, you're just going, let's find a way to explore that idea.
I don't know if you've mixed two quotes together, but it was
Possibly.
John Cleese that is talking about find someone fun, because that's kind of what he did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's in
Well, with the Monty Python crew, they...
Yeah, I think that's in his book. He's got a little book and we've got it here.
Oh, yeah.
It takes 5 seconds to read it.
Yeah.
And, he does talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. The other main thing that I wanted to... This is me bringing my topic. I've got two main ideas. One is go do a master's. But no, it's not that. It's find something, find a way. Well, like if you're experiencing that major roadblock where it's just, oh man, the way I thought this was going to play out isn't going to happen, a way to keep creativity alive, like find that way to keep creative dates with yourself in some way, keep some kind of creative practice going in your life, because it is so important and it's never to be dismissed or diminished in its importance. So my encouragement is just to value that in whatever form it takes. And the other thing that I did during this time where it was this pretty massive roadblock in terms of how life was going to play out and how any plans that we had were just like totally derailed. I decided to be a little bit kind to myself. And this, I know this, like everyone says this, and I've never previously been able to practice it. They say, be kind to yourself, generous to yourself. And I'd be like, yeah, right. Because I don't know, I always was hypercritical and had just impossible to reach standards, like in everything, like from parenting to, I don't know, just everything, literally everything. And for whatever reason, I managed to be able to give myself a break in this area, in producing the future books that I wanted to and all of that during this time that I was really trying to grapple with what the future would hold for our daughter. And I decided to just kind of, okay, I'll do this uni course. It'll keep things ticking along, keep the dream alive, keep me creating in some respect. And I'm not going to give myself a hard time about it. I'm not going to start thinking about I should have done this and by this time limit and so on. And it got me thinking when I was writing this, like, how on earth does that horrible little voice get so strong, like the one that says you should have done this, you should have done this by this time? Like, where does it get its confidence from? Why is it so bloody brazen and sure of itself to be able to say those things?
Do you reckon that's like the main reason people go, I wish I was, and then they name any animal? Because animals don't, well, I'm not sure how we know this, but I'm going to say it's fact.
What, that they don't compare themselves?
They don't have that inner monologue.
So you don't think that our cat, the Brigadier, otherwise known as
SF Nubs,
or Nibbles, as her official name is, you don't think she looks at Kittler, who's our neighbour's cat, and goes, I wish I could climb that fence. Why
No.
Why is my cartilage not strong enough? We know our cat doesn't have good cartilage. That's why she has practically no ears. But yeah, you don't think she's just like comparing?
No, not at all. Yeah, that's why animals' lives look more peaceful, apart from when they're being pursued by a predator. But when they're just having a drink by the stream, yeah, it's
peaceful. Do you know the worst thing about that horrible voice that judges us and tells us, oh, you should have done this, you should have completed that, you should have finished this, you should have done that? The worst thing about it is that it actually gives us permission to not keep trying and to give up. And that's the most dangerous thing about it, because it's not real. It's not true. Like there is no time limit on things. There is no things that we should have done or whatever. In creative practice, if we're valuing the creativity that we've got, it's about the doing it. It's about the being in that moment of doing something. So the time doesn't exist and the product doesn't exist. It's about the doing of it. But if we listen to that voice that says we should have, and that very confident, where on earth is it pulling that from? Voice, it's a liar, and it's born out of our fear, and we have to challenge it, because we need to give ourselves permission to do the work and to have the agony and the ecstasy of it, of the grappling with that. And that voice stops us from giving ourselves permission to do that. And it stops us from ever inviting others to hear or read or see our work and never hear their criticism. That's where the fear comes from. But that inner critic, we really can't give it any airtime, because it's just going to kill all our enjoyment of our creativity. Yeah, I decided not to hate on myself during this time, and I still do that. I just decided to halt that inner criticism on that one thing of producing creative works, because I realised, with Bertie's health conditions, life wasn't going to be a linear progression the way you expect raising kids will be. So I just gave myself permission to not give myself a hard time.
Permission to shine.
No, permission should just not be horrendous to myself, I think. And I'm trying to...
Cut yourself some slack.
Trying to extend that now into other, like, practices of self-kindness in other areas of my life. And I feel better when I do, because the process of living and being and doing, it's better, and it's more open to a lot of those creative ways. They're my two things, and I wanted to keep it as two. One was to find that way of making a creative appointment with yourself. In my case, it was that longer term doing a uni course. And mind you, sometimes I was only doing one subject at a time, so it took a while. And the other one is not being so hard on myself and allowing that creative process to be a process and to be a timeless thing and to be about the creativity and not about being the creator. And the shift in my thinking was, instead of being like, I am a writer, I would just shift my focus to I write. And that's what I do, is I write. And that might just be a journal some days, or some days nothing, or some days an idea that's in my head that I'll probably never finish.
At the start of the show, you were talking about titles, about how you view yourself. So that's what you're saying. Instead of viewing yourself as a writer and then all the pressure that comes with that, you're just saying, I write.
Yep.
And that gives you permission to just sit down and write.
Yeah. It's about the doing and not the
Because that would be another interesting discussion that we have had over the years of the burden of titles, and when you feel like you can't live up to a title, or it's not quite the right title for what you do.
Yeah.
It's such a it seems like such a small thing, but it can have such big consequences on how you approach your work and whether you actually are achieving what you want to achieve.
Definitely be worth a deep dive another day, another topic that's not in our list that we can explore.
You've been listening to Pain in the Arts. You can support the show on Patreon for free or become a paid subscriber. Patreon.com/Pain in the Arts Life, actually. Stick the LIFE at the end of that. Pain in the Arts Life. You can follow the show on your favourite podcast app, and you can visit our website, paininthearts.life.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
See ya.